It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce Chaya Subar. We're here in your beautiful home in Jerusalem. And Chaya, if you could mention about your amazing story and your family and where you were born.
With pleasure. I was born in 1939 in Nadwolna, Poland. And as we all know, the war started September 1st, 1939. From the moment that I was born, my mother tried to find goyim that would be willing to take me, because the Jews already certainly had a good sense of what was happening to them in Poland. Now, the Jews already had an inkling of what was going to happen. In 1923, Hitler wrote a book called Mein Kampf, and he spelled out what was going to be, but no one believed him. By 1933, he was voted into parliament. Even the Germans said, "Oh, that lunatic?" They laughed at him. By 1939, he started breaking up the world, taking over the world. But by 1939, you couldn't run anymore. In the beginning, before 39, when people were arrested, the few that were able to escape from the labor camps ran back to their communities and said, "Läuf, Brüder, men brennt uns. Run, brothers, they're burning us alive." And the people of the town would say, "Shah still, what are you making such a fuss about? It's a pogrom. We've had other pogroms." Indeed, Jews started coming to Poland in the 10th century. And until the 16th century, there were some problems, but nothing of a great magnitude. Indeed, like a typical pogrom, 100, 200 people, they survived. So those that were able to escape the labor camps, no one believed them. No one wanted to believe them. Shah still was the response that they got. It's just another pogrom. And, as I said, by September 1st, 1939, you couldn't run anymore. And I was just born in April before. So, what does my mother do? She tried for 2 years to find goyim to give me away. But everybody knew who my family were. My grandfather was a very prominent, affluent Jew, owned many businesses. So everybody knew him. No one wanted me. As a matter of fact, one couple apparently did take me and took all the money that my mother gave them to take care of me. The next morning, my mother opens the door, and there I am on her doorstep, not even the clothes on my back. Finally, out of sheer desperation, she got a letter. She sent a letter to my father, who was a partisaner in the forests. Now, my father was arrested, put into a labor camp in the midst of 1939, in the middle of September 1939. From that labor camp, a short while later, he was transferred to another labor camp. By 1941, he escaped. Somehow he was able to do that. And he ran immediately to the forests to join a partisaner group. That's exactly where he was when he got the letter from my mother. "Yossel, I don't know what else to do. I've tried to find, but nobody wants her. I don't know what to do. What should I do? So my father, who, of course, they were all friends, those in the partisanes, was lamenting to one of the newcomers to this partisan group. I just got a letter from my wife. We have a daughter. She's about 2, and she can't find anybody that's willing to take her. So this man's name is Paterik. Paterik said, I think I know somebody that would be willing to take her. Why don't you go, get your daughter, and we'll go to this village, to this couple. That's what my father did. He came to Nadvona, picked me up, told my mother he's got a friend, Paterik, that thinks he's got a couple that would be willing to take me. My mother... So I went with Paterik and my father to a village near Lublin called Dębszczyzna. And he went to this couple, Stanislav and Karolina Klimek, in Dębszczyzna. They come to this couple, and Paterik said, after pleasantries, would you like to have this child? She looks at me and she comes over and very happy, very happy. She said, yes, we would be thrilled to have this child. So my father says to her, well, then you have to understand, I'm a Jew and this is my daughter. Now you know and I know what's happening to my people. I doubt very much any of the adults will survive. So she's yours, under one condition. If by some miracle someone survives after this hell that's going on and finds her and reclaims her, you have to give her back. Oh yes, yes, yes. He took this lady's name, address. He went back to my mother, and he said to my mother, our daughter is with a couple by the name of Klimek in Dębszczyzna. Now you come with me. She said, no, I can't go with you yet. Why not? I won't leave my parents. She didn't know that just months later both her parents would die under different circumstances, which I will tell you what the circumstances were. So she stayed, continued to stay. There was a chair there.
Maybe one can show, this is a picture of your parents.
This is a wedding picture of my parents. They were married in 1936 in Poland. I only know about 2 or 3 people in this picture, that is all. I never met my grandparents. The only time my eyes saw my father was when he came with Paterik to take me to this couple. But I have no memory of him. Okay, you have it?
You can see it was a very, very religious family.
They were from the Nadvona Hasidim. Now what's interesting is my grandparents on my mother's side, they were from the Nadvona Hasidim. And you see this beard, and you can tell. My father's parents were Misnagdim. In those years, that was called a mixed marriage. Right. And here, my parents, a sister, a brother, and another sister. They had 7 children, my mother's parents. Here are 1, 2, 3, 4, my mother 5, and there were 2 more that are obviously not in this picture. Going back to the story.
There's just another picture of your mother and your father.
Yes, indeed. Here you have 6 of these are my grandparents on my mother's side. The only ones that I knew were my mother, her sister. Her brother. So that's 3 that I know here. My uncle, who came to America in 1933, my mother and her sister. The others I did not know. I know that her name was Blimka. When the war started already, and her parents already were dead, my grandparents, she tried to run and came to a city, I don't know the name of the city, and one of the people on the street recognized her and went to a German soldier, that's a Jew, and a group of boys, men, accosted, she 18 years old at the time, accosted her, beat her severely, raped her and killed her. I don't know the history of the others. I do know that my uncle, there was a lady that came back to Poland to visit her family. He met this lady, they got married, and they went to America because she came from America. My aunt, Aunt Giza, and my mother, when they started running, which I'll tell you about that, it was my mother took Aunt Giza with her. Now, how did my grandparents die? My grandfather, I should also show you this picture. This is 5 days before my mother died. My mother was diagnosed with lung cancer because she worked in a factory when we came to America, asbestos, and finally when she was 92, the asbestos killed her. But what killed her, she had cancer as well, lung cancer, and lung cancer, and the cancer. Mother was not supposed to eat anything salty. Unfortunately, she had a strong craving for herring. Herring, as you know, is very salty, and that's what got her, the heart.
So this is just a few days before she passed away.
This is I'm Shomer Shabbos. I came to visit when, especially after she was diagnosed, I came to visit every 3-4 weeks to visit them. I took care of them. And this is a Shabbos. This is her husband, her second husband, he just came back from shul. Now, you don't touch a camera on Shabbos. I'm sitting on the porch after he came back from shul and they're sitting together. I'm sitting on the porch and I am hearing in here, take a photo of them because that'll be the last photo you'll ever be able to take. But it's Shabbos. No, you take a photo of them because that's the last, I can hear it in here. So I took my camera and I took this on a Shabbos. This was on a Shabbos. That Thursday that followed, she was gone.
And Chaya, you have a picture of your father and your mother in Poland.
This is a picture of my father and her brother.
Your mother.
My mother and her brother.
Your mother and her brother.
This one, right here. This was in 1930.
So it was before your mother was married?
Yes. And this is native costume of where they were. So they were in costume. My grandfather...
And can we just see the picture again of your father and your mother on their wedding? So they made such a special couple, your parents.
Very much so. Very much
very
so.
Special.
He obviously was a they both very special people.
How did you keep these pictures? How did you get them?
I got them, I was already an adult. Well, just a few years, I was already married with children. My uncle had these pictures, and we came to visit them, and he said to my mother, Anna, I have some family pictures.
So they were sent most probably to America.
He had them, yes, he must have gotten them right.
So this is the only picture you have of your father?
Yes. Now, the second time I saw a picture of my father, when I went to Majdanek. That's where he was. Well, shall I go back to the story when we get to that?
Okay.
So where did I finish?
Your father brings you to this non-Jewish lady.
To the couple.
Near Lublin.
Yes.
What was the name of the town?
Damszczyzna. And the next day, we went to church in Lublin, because the church kept records of, I would imagine, the Goyim, of the community, but they also kept records of the Jews that were slaughtered. Because everybody had ID cards, food ration cards, ID card. So they kept a record of those Jews that were slaughtered, so they wouldn't need food ration cards. They wouldn't need, so she put my real name, Clara Bressler, on the Jews list. That means that Clara Bressler was killed. Vanja Klimek, her daughter, on the Christian list. So that's what they called me, Vanja Klimek.
And they never had children of their own?
I did not find that out until 2017. According to my mother, because I used to ask my mother, why would they take me? And my mother said, because they had a daughter that looked very much like me, was my age when, according to my mother, when my father met this lady on a back road, wheeling me in a baby carriage, and he was desperate. He tried to find somebody to take me, and nobody was willing to take me. And so he sees this lady on the road. This is all according to my mother. He said, "Excuse me, would you like to have this child?" And this lady looks at me, can't believe what she's seeing, practically a twin of her daughter. And she said, "Yes, I would be very happy to have this child." And that's when he tells her that he's a Jew, etc., etc. None of that is so. How I came to the clinics are through Paterik, the partisana, who took my father to this couple. That's what actually happened. And then, as I said, in the church, it was Vanja Klimek. I asked, no, let me go in order. We'll get to 2017. So, I was registered in the church list as Clara Bressler, my real name. I'm dead, according to the church list. And Vanja Klimek, according to the Christian list, that I belong to Stanislav and Karolina Klimek. Okay. So now, my earliest memory is around the age of 3. Every time I would go outside, there were children. 2 of the boys of this group of children, older boys, older than I and the other children, they would beat me up. Severely. And they would call me Żyd, Żydówka, meaning Jew, which I didn't understand. What does a Żyd have to do with me? I mean, we went to church every single Sunday, and every single Sunday, the Galach, the priest, said the same thing. Brothers and sisters, how fortunate we are that we have a Savior amongst us. He's getting rid of the vermin. Savior is Hitler, and the vermin are the Jews.
And this was in the church?
And this is what I'm hearing every single Sunday in church. So why are these kids calling me Žid? I'm the daughter to Karolina and Stanislav Klimek. Why are they calling me Žid? I couldn't understand that. By the time I was 4, Mom, because that's who they were in my mind, they were Mom and Dad, took me to the doctor. And the doctor said, Mrs. Klimek, you better keep your daughter indoors. I don't think her body can take another one of those beatings. So I would stay, especially when they went away. They had a piece of land away from the house that they grew vegetables. And on Thursdays, market day, they would go and sell those vegetables. That's how they made their money. And so every time they would go away, I would certainly stay in the house. It wasn't safe for me to be outside of the house. And by the time I am 5, I'm in the house by myself, and everything in the house starts shaking. I should describe the house to you. It was stone inside, stone walls, stone floor. It was one room, this whole house. In the middle of the room was a table, 4 chairs, one window. Under the window was a cot. That is where I slept, on the cot. In the far corner on the other side of the room was a bed. That's where Mom and Dad slept. Then there was a couple of 2 cabinets, the dishes, the pots and pans and all that business, the towels, whatever. That was our home. And as you walked in the door, in this wall, as you walked in, there was a great big hole. Underneath was wood, and you could hang a great big pot. And that's where she cooked. That was her oven. That was her stove, her oven, you name it. And that was our mansion. It was filled with love. Those 2 people loved me unconditionally. I didn't find out until many, many, many decades later. She had a sister she didn't keep in touch with, because not to jeopardize me. So here we are, age of 5. I'm in the house by myself. Everything starts shaking, and I became quite frightened. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know about things like hurricanes or anything like that. I didn't know why they're shaking. So I ran out of the house, and right outside our house there were 2 cherry trees. They were called Vanjas trees. I used to climb up them, and that was my little haven. That's where I could play for hours. And I'm up in the tree, and because it was in full bloom, you couldn't tell that there was anything or anybody up there. The leaves hid me, you couldn't tell. So I'm up there, high up, and I can see the one road. Damszczyzna only has one road to this day. And on that road were 6 trucks. That was what caused the shaking in the houses. Those trucks driving up. Over here are the villagers. And I saw something very strange that I had not seen since my earliest memory living there. People running and scared, such frightened faces. I'd never seen that before. And the trucks come up, stop. Out of the first truck come out 2 soldiers. They were Gestapo, 2 German soldiers. They're starting to walk up the road. I guess they were going to see how easy was it going to be to do what they wanted to do. Apparently what was their habit, if they were missing anything, they needed any supplies, They would go to any community, take what they need. If anybody got in the way, just machine gun them down and leave. Simple, according to them. So 2 soldiers are walking up. Next to our house was an 18-year-old mama. She had given birth to her baby 2 months before. She's holding her baby this way and sees how everybody's running, scared. So she thought, well, maybe it'll be safer on the other side of the road. So she started running across the road. She didn't look down the road. She didn't see those 2 soldiers walking up. As she started running, the 2 soldiers saw her. Machine gunned her down.
And you saw this?
And I'm up there, and as soon as the machine gun started going, I went like this. And I learned when I was up there, which holds steady with me to this day. You never show fear. You never cry, because that's weakness. Quiet. And those 2 soldiers, while I'm like this, the entire time that I was up there, until they left, I was with my hand over my mouth. Because I was afraid if I would make a sound, the machine gun would go up in that tree and just go up and start shooting. And so the 2 soldiers walk up to the body, and both soldiers kick her so severely to make sure that she's dead. They kick her so hard that when she fell like this with the baby, that she rolled off the baby. Well, she took all the bullets. The baby was still living. And they both look at each other and they smile, the 2 German soldiers. And they both bend down. One takes one leg, the other one takes the other leg, and they walk in opposite directions. Never show fear. Don't cry. And that's how it was for all the time I was up there. And they continued. The other soldiers came out, and they came up, and the machine guns went off every so often. And pretty soon that one road already had blood coming down. And they left. They had what they needed, what they wanted. I climbed down. I went over to where the baby was, picked up that baby, carried it to the back of its house, because a lady lived near us, and I dug a hole in the back of the house, big enough to put that baby in, and I closed it up. Mom and Dad came back from the field. They saw this balagan, this what was going on, and blood on the road. What happened? So I told them what happened. I took Dad to where the body was of Mama. He picked her up. We went to back of the house. He saw that hole that I had of the baby, but he dug a proper grave, a hole, put Mama in. We dug up the baby and put the baby on top of her, and then he covered her up properly, like a proper grave. And that was that.
And you were only around 5 at this age.
Yeah. So people assume I was ever a child. I was never a child. Beatings? From my earliest memory? There was no such thing as toys. I never had a toy.
Did you ever ask you know that they weren't your real parents? But
No, I did not know.
Did you ask them why they calling me?
But I didn't know.
But did you ask them why they calling me Jid, or why they calling me, why they beating me?
That I have no memory of.
But they were very good to you.
They loved me. It's that love that sustained me for the rest of my life, to this day. Because that was the last time that I had gotten love. The last time. No, those two Goyim, Polish Goyim, you should know that Poles were very willing helpers to their German soldiers. Very willing helpers. God, He gave me a gift. That Paterick took us to them. They loved me. I figured out, can I tell you it's a fact? No. But I figured out, because she did have a sister in another town. But I didn't know she had a sister in another town. I figured out that because they did know that I was a Jew, they didn't want to make waves. They didn't want to rock the boat, as the saying goes, so that the people in the town wouldn't do anything. I don't know why they beat me. Why did they call me a Žid? I don't know. But 2017 was very revealing to me, I will tell you that. Alrighty. Life went back. Let's go now. I am 6. It's now 1945. The mother of the 2 boys that did the worst of the beating, we would go to church Sunday, we would come home, we would have lunch, and then a knock on the door. And there was the mother of the 2 boys that did the worst of the beating. She would come and visit my mom. Every single Sunday, she would come. They would have a nice talk. And before she left, she would pick something up from our home. Oh, Mrs. Klimek, how lovely. Can I borrow this? She did this every single Sunday. So by the time I'm 6, again she picked something up. Again she said, oh, Mrs. Klimek, how lovely, may I borrow this? So I go over to her and I say, in this tone, you know, you come here every single Sunday. You pick something up that belongs to my mother and you say, can I borrow this? You never brought anything back. That's called taking, not borrowing. I'm 82 now. I still have a big mouth. Hasn't cured me. And I've gotten in trouble for it, but not as bad as the trouble that I was going to get from that big mouth. This lady did not appreciate that I opened a mouth to her. So during that week, she went to Lublin, to the Gestapo headquarters, and she said, I come from Dębczyzna. We have a family in Dębczyzna is hiding a Jewish child. That's all you had to do, was point a finger of anybody, say they're Jews, and that's all the Germans needed. You didn't have to prove it. The following Sunday, I'm eating on that one window, has a wide windowsill. I'm sitting on that, eating cold milk and noodles. I happen to look up and I start counting. 1, 2, 3, and I got up to 30. I count 30 soldiers. And I say to my mom, oh, look, Mommy, they're going to come and shoot me. That part I can't figure out, why did I say that? But that's what I said. And sure enough, they come to our house. They see me, and they go, point one man from this group. So he must have been the leader of this group. Points to me and, and says, go to the wall. I hear him tell my mom, excuse me, we have on good authority that this is a Jew. We are a firing squad come to exterminate the Jew. My mother says, don't be ridiculous. This isn't the Jew, this is my daughter. Would I risk my life for a Jew? You know, we've been helping you exterminate the Jews. I wouldn't risk my life for a Jew. And every time she uses the word Jew, I'm going to get a napkin. Oh, I had one here. Every time she uses the word Jew, she spits on the ground. No, 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 this is a firing squad. We've come to do a job. And that's how I find out I'm a Jew. Now, I'm thinking, so that's why the kids beat me up and called me a Žid. Because I am a Jew. I am a Žid. But wait a minute. Something doesn't make sense. In the church, our priest said that Hitler loves children. If he loves children, then why would he shoot me? It doesn't make sense to me. Of course, I found out much later, in the camps, when the soldiers had rifle practice, they would throw up and then shoot. It's babies that they threw up. Young children's skins were made into lampshades. There was a lampshade lady in one of the camps. I don't know which one. We didn't hear that in the church. We heard that Hitler loves children. So I have a conversation with my best friend. And he has been my best friend from my very earliest memory. God. And I say, dear God, give me the words to get out of this. And I promise you, if you let me grow up, if you let me get married, and if you let me have children, I promise you, I'll give you back Židden. That was the promise I made at the age of 6. So from that point on, I knew the kind of Jew I had to be, because I had to give God back Židden. That was a promise I made. I don't break promises. You should know we're not supposed to count our children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren. God blessed me with 3 sons. Almost 6 years ago, he took back my youngest son. My son was killed. But that son left 10 children. Each one have kept my promise. They're very devoted to Yiddishkeit. Not only in the kind of a mensch that they are, to use English, Yiddish words, an ehrliche Yid, an honorable Jew. They don't make differences between a Haredi, Orthodox Leumi, conservative, reform. A Jew is a Jew, and we're like this. So my question I have to the audience watching, why are we making differences among Jews? When Hitler marched us into the gas chambers, he had one room, and the only sign above that room was Jew. Now, he knew we were one people, How dare we make differences, one Jew against another? We're doing a better job than Hitler's men did. How dare we? I'd like that answer, please. Somebody answer me. Before the war, we were 18 million. After the war, we were 12 million. It's now 2021, and we're only 13 and a half or 14 million. We never even replaced ourselves. America is going through 80% assimilation. Hitler, he thought he did a good job. Look at the job we're doing, making these differences amongst each other. That is the message I would like my listening audience to answer. We don't need Hitlers. We're doing a better job. I'm angry.
It's very sad. Yeah.
I'm very angry. That's why we had to lose 6 million? So we could have the privilege of forgetting who we are? You know, during Hitler's time, anyone that converted thinking they were going to be safe. Hitler, if you were a Jew 5 generations ago, you were a Jew. And how easy we discard being this amazing, amazing faith. And God gave us the good book of how to be an honorable human being. You know, living in this world, I've created a couple of sayings. And it's life that taught me these sayings. Because I wear my head covered, or a man wears a yarmulke, don't assume that he's a pious Jew. When I say pious, because you don't go to synagogue and you don't go like this, that's called shuckling in Yiddish, that doesn't mean that makes you a Jew. A shuckler who goes like this in the synagogue does not make a pious man. How do you treat your fellow human being? How do you treat your brothers and sisters, other Jews, because they don't follow exactly like you? How do you treat in business? That's the first question when we get up there, because every single one of us will have to go through a judgment process when we get up there. If you want to know where you're going to get up there, it depends entirely on you what you do down here. It's not God. It's not God that will decide where you will go when you have your last breath. It's you, by what you do on this earth. It's you that will decide, will you go to paradise? We don't believe in hell, but there are levels up there. And it's up to you where you're going to go. Nobody else. Somebody else makes a mistake, it doesn't go in your ledger. You know, we say in Rosh Hashanah, the good Lord opens up the book and sees all the debits and credits, all the check marks and the X's that we have in our book. Based on what we have in our book, he decides what our fate will be for the following year. But who is it that puts the pluses and minuses in that book? You, by your actions. So don't, well, he did bad by me. Yeah, but his bad doesn't go in your ledger. It's what you do. So, the firing squad, I tell this man, I turn around, and I already hear as I'm walking to the wall, ready, aim, and he's waiting for me to turn around, and when I turn around, so then he's going to say, fire, because when I turn around, I see 29 guns pointed at me, and one man with a hand up. That's the one that was talking to my mother, and he's the one waiting for me to turn around so he could say fire. And that's who I look straight in the face. And when I tell people that I'm a 6-year-old and I say to this man, Dummkopf, people say to me, that's not possible. To this day, that's not possible. You couldn't have possibly said that. I said, Dummkopf, don't you know you're going to shoot the future generation of Deutschland? What do you think the Führer will do to you when he finds out you're going to shoot the future generation of Deutschland? Where did I base this sentence on? Because in church I heard how much Hitler loved children. And yet when I tell people that's what I said, they're telling me, that's not possible. You couldn't have said that. 6-year-old would say something like that? People, you're assuming I was ever a child. At 6, I face a firing squad. At 5, a baby's torn that I bury and see the mother buried. From the age of 3, I'm being beaten every time I go outside. When was I a child? Somebody tell me. I'd like to know. I'll tell you when I became a very rambunctious teenager, when I was already married with children. I would go to visit my kids. This son that I told you was killed 6 years ago. I had a Sefer Torah written. He's holding that Sefer Torah because I gave it to his oldest son. The oldest son wrote 3 books. Making a Difference. This is about his father. The picture I just showed you of my son. If you want to learn how to be an amazing husband, an amazing father, read this. That will teach you, because that was my son. He also wrote a book, Let There Be Time, describing the Jewish calendar and its meanings. And this latest book was 39 Things You Can Do on Shabbos. Because we keep hearing from people, oh, there's so many restrictions. Shabbos, I must tell you something. I call it tune-up time. Because during the week from Sunday until Friday, just before I light my Shabbos candles, I am such a busy lady. I light my Shabbos candles. No phones. Nobody... this, do that, do the other. I can tune up and regain my strength. There are so many things we can do on Shabbat to rejuvenate so we can take the following week. How you program this will very much determine how the rest of your body goes. You've asked me, how can I be so positive? If I were, like many Holocaust survivors, bitter, angry, questions, how could God have permitted something like this? There is no God. That's what I hear. Excuse me, you obviously are forgetting the facts. Jews knew starting in 1923 what was going to happen. With Hitler writing that book, Mein Kampf, we already were given very strong hints. And as 1930s came, we already knew what was going to happen. And what did we say? Oh, I can't leave my home. My grandfather, my mother's parents, he's one of the ones that said, Shashtel, it's another pogrom. Refused to believe what was happening. It's another pogrom. Then, after I was given away already, he went to Stanislav because he had business to attend, and the city municipalities were there that he had to do the business with. The Nazi soldiers were already in Stanislav, and here they see a Jew with this beard. They say, come here, Jew, come here, Jude. They grab him by the beard, with the knife cut to the bone. This is what we do to Jews. How he makes it back home, I have no idea. But he got back home, but very shortly after he died. He must have realized he could have saved his whole family if they would have listened before 1939, if they could have reacted. But they didn't. No, I've got businesses, I've got a home, I've got all kinds of excuses. Don't blame God for the war. Blame yourself. Where were you? Why didn't you react when you saw the signs? You're blaming God for something you didn't do? What is this? God gave you the opportunity. He gave you decades. More than... It started 1923. This was 1939. Look how many years. You were forewarned. You were forewarned. And what excuses did you make? And you blaming God? We wanted free will. Well, he gave us free will. But he also forewarned you, and you didn't listen. So don't blame God. Nothing is different today either. What's going on now in America is atrocious. The anti-Semitism is coming out into the open. You're being forewarned. Are you listening? Israel, it's not perfect. Because it's human beings. And we are not perfect. But it's the only country that goes like this to a Jew. You're welcome. Come back. Now, is Israel perfect? No. For instance, I don't know how to speak Hebrew. It's going to be 14 years that I'm here. And I am constantly lectured. You're in Israel now. You should be talking Hebrew. They're right. But it's not my doing that I have silent strokes, and it's that part of the brain that is affected. Do I need to explain that to another person? I shouldn't have to explain that. A Jew comes home, you should go like this. To every Jew, whether they speak the language or not. Didn't we pay enough prices? When I came to America, I got from the children, hey, Hitler's wife, why don't you go back where you came from? America.
Were these non-Jewish children?
Right.
In America?
Yes. In Poland, I had to face a firing squad. No, first I had to get beatings. I had to face a firing squad. I came to America. Why don't you, Hitler's wife, why don't you go back where you came from? And I was beaten by a gang of, and who ran that gang? A little Italian girl. I found out who ordered the beating. That little girl, her name was Gloria. I found out where Gloria lived. I gave her a taste of the beatings that I got. I did to her what was done to me. And I told Gloria when she was on the ground, if one of your guys touches me again, next time you won't get up. I learned how to fight back. Okay, but from a Jew, I need to hear, you should be talking Hebrew. In 1948, we had 600,000 Jews. We have now, 2021, almost 10 million. 76% are Jews, the others are not. So the others that are here, you should be talking Hebrew or get the hell out. Excuse my French. I shouldn't do that to the French. Excuse my language.
No, you've got a good point, yeah.
What is this?
Hi, can I ask, what gave you the strength to even speak to the leader of the firing squad? How did you do this?
Because in church I heard that Hitler loved children. So why would a firing squad shoot a child?
And you were speaking in Polish?
Yes, that's the only language I knew.
He obviously understood the Polish.
Yes.
And then what did he do when you said this? He must have been in shock.
So, the way I remember it, when she heard what I said to him, that Hitler, future generation he will shoot, she came to the wall. She said, I am telling you, this is my daughter. Well, if you're going to shoot her, then you'll have to shoot us both. And she's holding me in front of that wall, then you'll have to shoot us both. This is a Polish lady who knew I was a Jew, and she said, you'll have to shoot us both. So let's not be so fast and judge a group of people that they're all the same. They're not. There were some Poles, we have righteous Gentiles. We had righteous Gentiles. There's a problem between Arabs and Jews in this country. Not all Arabs are extremists.
But I just want to get back, and you're right, but with the righteous Gentiles, the righteous Polish Gentiles, not only did they put their own lives, they put the whole family lives at risk, because if they were found out, and they were found out, they would kill the whole family.
Exactly.
As a deterrent to help Jews.
Exactly.
And it actually did happen.
That's right. That's correct. And yet we paint with a broad stroke all people of any particular group. My youngest son that I showed you, that holding the Sefer Torah, he was into Kiruv. Is the correct way of saying it? And he didn't go like this, who's a Jew? He went like this. He would invite into his Haredi home Jews that didn't know what it meant to have a Shabbos, to show them what a Shabbos looked like. Instead of being judgmental because somebody else didn't follow the way he followed, instead, let me show you. And it's up to you if you want.
So I just want to ask you, when your mother, okay, you know she wasn't your real mother, but when your mother was prepared to give her life to save you, I mean, that is an amazing, incredible thing to do.
And what happened when she did that, instead of saying fire, he went halt, that soldier, that leader. He said stop to the soldiers. They put their guns down, and he said to her, we're going to go back to Lublin, and we're going to go to the church, and we're going to check their records. So we expected after, and then I thought they left. We expected they would come back at any time, because when she registered me in the church records, Vanja Klimek, Clara Bressler, the same day, the same time, obviously it was the same person, but they never came back. So I felt they never went to the church. That was what I felt. In 2017, my oldest son, who lives in Israel, decided to find his great-great-grandfather's cemetery, his father's grandfather. And he did. He found where the cemetery was. There wasn't a single solitary stone standing up, the gravestone, none. It was all barren land, overgrown. He, out of his own money, hired people to put a fence around this cemetery. And of course he worked with the Taub Foundation. He worked with different foundations in Poland. And when he was in Poland before, he thought he's a trained tour guide all over Israel. He decided also he wanted to be a tour guide in Poland of all the sites that we Jews had, because we were successful in the sense, with the pogroms, we had businesses. We did. So he befriended a man that worked for a very important organization that researches the contributions of the Jews that were slaughtered, the NN Theater. And so he contacted this man, because they were friends by then, Emil. Because Emil was helping him also do the research with the cemetery. By the way, Emil, did I ever tell you my mother was born in Poland? No. Yeah, she was a hidden child. Really? Where? Damszczyzna. Really? I know Damszczyzna. Why didn't you send me the information? So, I sent to Yossi. Yossi sent to Emil all the information about the clinics. Because when Gorbachev gave America over 400,000 records that they had, the American Red Cross advertised throughout America, if you want us to find somebody, give us the information and we'll find them for you. So I gave them Karolina and Stanislav Klimek in Damszczyzna. I also gave them Yossel Bressler, because that's all I knew about my father. His name was Yossel Bressler. And what I also knew, he was born in 1911. That's it. That's all I knew. A year later, the Red Cross sent me a full page, detailed information about the clinics. When they were born, when they died, what happened to them after each of them died, all these things I had. Yossi sent that paper to Emil. He went to Damszczyzna and he asked the city council person, they don't call them mayors, they call them city council. They asked the city council person, is there anyone living here now that knew the clinics? Yeah, a first cousin to Karolina. So Emil went to Karolina. Do you have any memory of the war? Yeah, I remember playing with Klimek's little girl, Vanja Klimek. This is, Emil tells Yossi, my son. Yeah, he found a lady, and she just remembers playing with Vanja Klimek. My son tells me this, and my hands are shaking. I said, Yossi, that was me. There was a human being that was alive that knew me during that time. I was shocked. So I asked my husband, how would you feel if I left for Poland for 2 weeks? Then I called one of my grandsons. Yair, wouldn't you be thrilled to move in with Saba for 2 weeks? Why? I told him why. Of course I will. He moved in for 2 weeks, so I knew my husband was in good hands. I called my son, I'm going with you to Poland. We came. The next day, in the morning, the first place, my son being a tour guide, he mapped out the entire 2 weeks of where we were going. And the first place we went was to Majdanek. And we were interviewed by the 2 researchers in Majdanek. Then they wanted us to see more of the books they'd written and all that. I said, no, I'm here for a reason. I want my son to say Kaddish for his grandfather, my father. Oh, so they told us where to go. There's a building in Majdanek that is with a roof on the side open, and in the middle there's this huge pit.
It's a monument. Yeah.
It's a pit that holds all the ashes of the Jews that they slaughtered.
It's exceptionally difficult monument to see and to be at.
That's where my father was. My father was in one labor camp, then transferred to another labor camp. In 1941 he escaped, joined the Partisanes. In 1943 they were rounded up from the forests, put into a ghetto. From the ghetto they were shipped to Majdanek. And on November 3rd, 1943, they were all shot and burned. And they have the ashes to this day. That's where they send us. We get to this site. I need 10 men. I need 9 more men because I want my son to say Kaddish. I need a minyan. There wasn't a human being around. I'm looking. Gotten you, I need a minyan. I told you my best friend is gotten you. From the distance, I see a whole group of people coming towards this building. And the closer they get, they're all talking in Hebrew. They come to this site, and the leader of this group, the lady, asked me, "Who are you?" I said, "My name is, my family, part of my family. Why are you here?" "Because I want my son to say Kaddish for his grandfather." So the woman turns to the men and says, "He," pointing to my son, "is going to lead the Kaddish and you will follow." This group of people work in the aviation department, and they go every year to Majdanek to say Kaddish for the neshamas that were slaughtered. My son led the Kaddish. Do you have any idea what that did for me? And they told me I should stay up there. I said, no, the men will be up there near that pit. I went down to the ground, and those that remained on the ground gave me 2 Israeli flags. Everybody was holding Israeli flags, and we're listening, 10 men led by my son Yossi saying Kaddish.
Was this the first time that Kaddish was said for
my father?
For your father?
Yes.
In Majdanek?
Yes.
And Chaya, when you went there, you saw the gas chambers and the crematorium?
The whole thing. I saw everything.
And it's still intact? It's still...
Yes. My son also arranged that we should go to Auschwitz. And we went part of the tour. Halfway through the tour, I said to my son, "You guys go ahead. I have to leave. I have to get out of here." Why? Not what I saw in Auschwitz. That's not what was making me angry. Because that's history. That is what happened. But it is our job to learn from our yesterdays, to study them well today so we don't repeat them in our tomorrows. And what made me angry? At my people. What did we learn? Here, Auschwitz, Majdanek, they all slaughtered us. And yet we have the nerve, we have the chutzpah to make differences, one Jew against another Jew. This is what made me angry. What have we learned from all our yesterdays? The first 4 years when I lived in Israel, you won't see me cry. I cried a little bit before. Did you know I was crying? You'll never see it. But when I went to bed every night for the first 4 years when I lived here, I cried. I waited to come to Israel since I was 8 years old. When I was 8, my mother reclaimed me. When I was 6 in 1945, she signed up for the American quota to let us in, but we had to wait until our number came up. Finally, in 1947, our number came up, and I was rejected because my health was not perfect. I had spots in my lungs. What did you expect when you ate potato peels and rats for food? Because there was starvation going on. So you expect somebody's going to come out of that healthy? I have very baby fine hair. I asked my doctor, "What's the matter with my hair? Why is it so thin and so fine?" And his question to me was, "What was your diet like from birth until 10? So I'm still paying prices for that time. I have health issues that come from that time, from the war, and from what was done to me after the war. We never leave the war. My mother was a very bitter, angry woman. I saw what it did to her. I saw what it did to other friends that we had that were survivors. There is no God. There is no humanity. It's God's fault. We're lying to ourselves when we say that.
Hi, when you went with your son to Poland, did you go back to the house that you were in?
Yes. In the morning we were in Majdanek. That afternoon we went to Dębszczyzna.
And how did it feel? First of all, before I ask you how did it feel, how did you feel going back to Poland? Were you nervous? Was it a difficult decision to make to go back?
No. When I went back in 1986 to Germany, because when I got remarried in 1986, my husband's son-in-law was a chaplain in Frankfurt. So we got married in March. In April following, he wanted to go back to Frankfurt to be with his daughter and son-in-law for Pesach, for Passover. Then by the time we got to the airport, I was hyperventilating. We were on the plane and I heard German and I wanted to go like this. But Poland, no. I wanted to go back and meet that lady because I had all these questions. What's very typical of a survivor, as they age, they start saying to themselves, I couldn't have possibly gone through these things. I buried a baby at the age of 5. With these fingers, I dug a hole. I faced a firing squad at the age of 6. That's not possible. I'm imagining it. I tried to find answers and nobody had answers. I finally decided, I know how I'm going to get the answers. I'm going to hire a hypnotist. He's going to hypnotize me and take me back. But then I said to myself, I know my head. He's not going to be able to hypnotize me. But I found the #1 hypnotist. I called him up. He said, I would be very glad to take your case. But you have to understand, yes, I live in Yerushalayim, but my practice is in Tel Aviv. I said, sir, I'm not going to schlep to Tel Aviv every single week. Is there anyone here in Yerushalayim? He said, as a matter of fact, there is. There's a man here that I personally trained in hypnotism. I said, that's who I want. I called the man up. I went to see him. And it is my minhag, my custom, before I go to anyone, whether it's a doctor or anyone, I interview them first to see if there is that rapport. And one of the questions that I asked him was, sir, how long have you been doing this? Oh, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've never had a failure. My response was, sir, there's a first time for everyone. So I know me. So I went to him for 6 times. 6 times he tried to hypnotize me, and not once could he hypnotize me. I was desperate. Now there's nobody left who's going to give me any answers. Then when my son found Emil, and Emil found this lady, somebody can answer me all my questions. So then we went to Dębszczyzna that afternoon. We took Emil with us to act as a translator. She greeted us with such kisses and warmth. Vanja Klimek. She saw Vanja Klimek again.
She recognized you straight away?
Yes. I didn't. I never remembered her. And Emil told her beforehand, don't prepare anything. They keep kosher. She doesn't know what kosher means. Emil tried to explain, but it didn't register. She had a table filled, and it looked absolutely delicious, but it couldn't touch it. But my son, in his wisdom, bought a cake, like you brought, we took it with us. And here's this gorgeous table. She had fruit and baked goods. The fruit we had. The tea we drank. But I couldn't touch the cakes. So we had our cake, and everybody enjoyed our cake.
Oh, wonderful.
And then question time. So Emil is sitting. Emil made up. He ate enough for all of us. Thank you, Emil. I was so grateful. And I started with my questions. First question. Why did the kids, especially those two boys, why did they beat me so hard and called me Żydówka? There were no Jews here. No, that's not true. This village had 4 Jews. That's why the kids called me Żydówka. Because they knew that there were other Žids in this town. Okay? When I was 5, you know, when the German soldiers came, and you know what I experienced with the mother and the baby? Yeah, but we weren't told until we were adults. The parents didn't want to tell us about that. But yeah, we knew what you did. Burying that baby, and then my dad came and made a proper hole in the back of the girl's house. We knew. When I was 6, you knew that I faced a firing squad. Oh yeah, we knew. By the way, they immediately said to me, because apparently the villagers also knew that it's the mother of the 2 boys that turned me into the Gestapo. And she said, oh, they left, and the boys, they're not living here anymore. I didn't ask them if the mother was still there. They immediately volunteered that information.
Can I ask, did this lady come back on the Sunday again after she stopped coming to the house?
She knew the Gestapo came, that the firing squad came. But we didn't know who turned us in. They just said they had it on good authority, but they never told us. But she didn't know that. But she knew that there's a firing squad came. Everybody in the village knew that a firing squad came. They saw them marching to our house. And I said, and so you know what happened to me during the firing squad? Yes. And then of course they left. No. I said, what do you mean no? They never came back. They couldn't. Because when they started to leave, they were accosted by the Russian soldiers. And they were all killed.
Really?
That's why they never came back. They never went to Lublin. Because if they would have gone to Lublin, they would have known Clara Bressler and Vanja Klimek were the same person. Then they would have come back. But they never left because the Russians got them first.
So this was at the end of the war?
Yes, 1945. And he said, halt, we're going to go back to Lublin and we're going to check the records. So we figured they never went there. The Klimeks and I, we figured they never went to the church because they never came back. I have no memory at all of Russians and clearing. To this day, I have no memory of that. Now, my life is not filled with miracles. You wonder why I'm such a strong believer in upstairs?
I just want to ask you, because it is something unbelievable. This lady that you went and you met,
Mm-hmm.
you must have developed such a
Excellent.
closeness.
Thank you for asking that. Excellent. Very shortly after the war finished, technically, my mother, who was in this Hotel Stern, she said, Hotel Stern, American soldiers came and liberated Hotel Stern. The soldiers that were there before, they escaped. They ran before the Americans came. So the Americans came, took over the hotel. My mother went to the leader of this army unit and said, People are going to come from different countries. They're going to want from you papers to go back to their countries. I have fluency in 7 languages. I can help you. Now you should know, when I was given away and my mother started running, okay, let's go backtrack.
Where did your mother go?
Excellent question, excellent. After I was given away, shortly after, my grandfather went to Stanislav and he had this knife cutting and he died shortly after. Very shortly after that, my grandmother, his wife, my grandmother was called by her sister, Friedler, my husband has typhus, I don't know what to do, help me. My grandmother was a tzedekah. Every Thursday she would cook and cook and cook. And it was my mother's job, of the 7 children, to take all the packages of things that she cooked and deliver it to the poor people in Natvona. Leave it in front of their door, ring the bell, knock on the door, and run. They shouldn't know who gave the food. That was my mother's job. My grandmother was a pure tzedekah. My grandfather built 2 houses next to each other. One for the daughters, one for the sons. In the daughter's house was the mikveh for the Jewish ladies of the town. In the son's house was the shul of the town. Those are the kind of people they were. So here, my grandmother is called by her sister, help me. Don't worry, I'll help you. She comes to the sister, my grandmother. Her name was Frida. Frida comes to the sister, I don't know the sister's name. And she nursed the husband back to health. But she caught his typhus and died. And because there was a epidemic, horrible epidemic that killed so many people, they used to come with these huge wheelbarrows and throw one body on top of the other. So my mother knows that this pious Jew has half his face cut off and he dies, and her mother, Tzedekah, has a body thrown, one body. And then comes Hitler, and she's in this hotel, and she feels guilty because Hitler came to visit quite a few times, and she didn't have the courage to kill him. I said, Mom, professional soldiers tried to kill him and they couldn't. You would never been able to kill him. She would never accept that.
But where did she run? She ran to...
So as soon as all 3 were gone, me, her father, her mother, one of the workers that my mother had working for her said to my mother, Pani Bressler, Mrs. Bressler, why are you still here? Don't you know the Germans are in the next town and they're going to come here next? So my mother says, foolish woman, where do you expect me to run? My ID card says Jew. I don't have a card like you, Christian. So the woman says, if that's your only problem, you can have my card. Take off that woman's picture, put my mother's picture on the card. She now became Anna Chopta, this Christian. So my mother says, I want to take my sister with me, Giza. No problem, you can have my sister's card. What was the price for these 2 Christian ID cards? My mother's house, everything in the house, and all the land adjoining it. And the 2 sisters, with the clothes on their back, ran with these 2 Christian ID cards. The first place they run to is the forest, because the partisans are there, hoping that the partisans can tell them where to go that might be safer. They get to the forest. That night, the German soldiers in the forest rounded up all the partisans they could find. They found this group of partisans. They took them all in, put them in jail, collected their ID cards to check that they were all authentic. Next morning, they let everybody go, gave them back their ID cards, including my mother, except for one girl. they hung her. And the soldiers say to the people that they let go, "This is what we do to Jews." The girl was not a Jew. She was a Christian. Why did they hang her? She had long black hair. Obviously she's a Jew, she's got black hair. The rest they let go. So my mother had back her ID card and she continued running. She wound up running to Ansbach, Germany. She asked somebody in the street, "Where'd you get a job over here?" And the old person says, "Only one place is hiring, Hotel Stern." Stern, a Jewish name, must be safe to go there. So she goes to Hotel Stern, and sure enough, they give her 2 jobs. And she's working there.
She was with her sister?
No, in the forests, when they were rounded up by the soldiers, they got separated. And by morning, they couldn't find each other. But they had to run. They couldn't stay around. So they ran, separated. So my mother runs. She winds up in the city of Ansbach. She gets the 2 jobs. After working there for a week, she realizes who the occupants are of this hotel. The elite Gestapo officers, of which Hitler came quite a few times. And she saw him. And she hears when the Gestapo are talking about how successful they are with the slaughtering of the Jews. Not only the Jews, 500,000 gypsies, Christians, anybody that disagreed with Hitler. You familiar with the name Pastor Martin Niemöller? And he wrote that poem, "When they were slaughtering the Russians, I didn't get involved because I wasn't a Russian. They were slaughtering the Protestants, I didn't get involved because I wasn't a Protestant. They were slaughtering the Jews, I didn't get involved because I wasn't a Jew. But now they're slaughtering me, and there's nobody left to get involved." Isn't that a lesson for all of us? Do we have to wait until we get slaughtered before we get involved? Isn't that what's happening now? What the blacks faced in America? And don't think, yes, it's better now for the blacks, but they're not completely out of the woods yet. It's much better than it was. They're not being hanged on the tree. Within my lifetime that happened. Okay? And what's happening to the Arabs? Although if a Jew gets lost in an Arab community, what happens to the Jews? When are we going to learn the lessons? We're just going to keep slaughtering each other. So,
your mother's in the hotel and
my mother tells this captain, yes, and not only that, after working there for a year, the workers started coming to her and saying, "You're a Jew, aren't you?" And my mother looked at them horrified. "Why would you call me such a horrible name?" And they said, "All of us that work here, we come from different countries. You know, when you get in a car, you can drive to all these different countries in Europe.
Yeah.
And all of us, we bring our letters to you when we get from home. You read every single one of those letters because we don't know how to read. And you read them to us. Only Jews are that smart." So now my mother's petrified of falling asleep. What if she says something, a nightmare, and says something in Yiddish? Then they'll know that she's a Jew. So she sees Hitler. She develops a guilt complex. She can't kill him. She's worried. One of the workers is going to go to the Gestapo and tell them Anna Chopter is a Jew. This is how she lives the war.
And she had brown, dark hair, she looked Jewish.
Yeah, but she always had her head covered. She learned that from when that girl was hung. So is it a wonder that she was diagnosed with being 60 to 80% emotionally damaged after the war? No wonder. So, when the Americans came, she told them, I'll help you process the papers, which she did. After the last one was processed, she says to the captain of this army unit, I helped you up to now it's your turn to help me. So the man says, name it, lady, without you I couldn't have done it. I want to go back to Poland. I want to find out if anybody survived. He said, lady, you don't seem to understand what the actual facts are. The war may be technically over for you guys, but it's not. They're still killing you. And he was right. Every day when we went into the city part of Ansbach, we found Jews slaughtered in alleyways. From 1945, this continued when we moved in 1947 because the American quota system rejected me. So my mother decided, let's go to Stuttgart and she'll apply again. And in Stuttgart, in both cities, we found Jews slaughtered in alleyways. 45 to 49. It did not stop. So my mother said, I'm going with your help or without your help. Okay, I'll give you one soldier to go back to Poland with you. So they went back to Poland. My mother asked around where she came from. Not one, she could not find one family member. Not from my father's side, not from my mother's side. Nothing. But she had this piece of paper that her husband gave her.
And she kept it all the years?
Yes. So she decided, well, obviously I'm dead, but she at least wanted to know where my grave was. So she said to the soldier, okay, now it's time to go here. And the soldier says to her, lady, you want to commit suicide? You have to do it on your time, not on my time. I'm going back to Ansbach. You can either join me or you're on your own. So my mother says, okay, I'm on my own. And the soldier left. She found a way of coming to Dumszczyzna. She asked somebody in a pub, where is such and such a house? They told her. She goes to the house. She knocks on the door. Guess who opened the door? I see this grown lady become white before my face. Lady, you're not feeling good? Come, sit down. What's the matter? Because my mother recognized me. I didn't know this lady. I mean, the Klimicks are my parents, right? What do I know from this lady? She sat down. I gave her some water to drink. Would you like something to eat? Where are your parents? They're not here, but they'll be back soon. Why don't you lay down, take a nap, and when they come back, they'll help you. After she finished eating, she said, what's your name? Vanja Klimick. Vanja, do you remember Yassel? My father. Do you remember Frida? My grandmother, on her side. Do you remember Hirsch? Israel? My grandfather on my mother's side. I don't know about Jewish names or Jews. What, this is Greek to me. I have no idea what she's talking about. I said, lady, obviously you're not feeling good. Go lay down. When my parents come back, they'll help you. She lay down. She got up. My parents came back. They walk into the house. As soon as Carolina sees this lady, and I didn't know this, my mother told me years later, she heard Carolina say, oh my God, Vanja's mother. She had this feeling. My mother hears this. She goes over to her, gives her a hug, and she says, whispers, yes, I am Vanja's mother. I've come to take my daughter. And Carolina says, no. What do you mean, no? My husband told you, if anybody survives and comes to reclaim her, you'll have to give her back. Of course I will. When he comes, I'll give him back his daughter. I don't know you. No. It would kill my husband if she left. No. So my mother had to go to the Polish court and plead her case. And the final judgment of the court was the child has to go with the real mother, plus $500 American has to go to the clinics. Where did my mother get $500 American? Do you know? What happened right after the war? Jewish organizations sprang up all over Europe buying back Jewish children. You know this famous story. A man went to a convent. And do you have any Jewish children? No, we don't have any Jewish children. Oh, I see it's lunchtime. Could I see your lunchroom? And of course, all the children were sitting around the tables eating lunch. Shema, and he says the full Shema. And a few children said, Amen.
I say, Chaya, did you ever ask your mother who this lady is? Or did it ever
This
occur
was
to
a
you?
stranger to me. I didn't know this lady.
And
I didn't know she was my mother.
your mother didn't say to her that this is your
No.
your real mother?
After the court decreed, they said to me, Vanju, this lady came to take you on a vacation because the war years were hard. They were difficult years. And I had difficult experiences. And a vacation sounds adventuresome. I didn't know what a vacation was. Okay, I'll go, but how long? How long will I have to be on this vacation? 2 weeks. And after the 2 weeks, I'm coming home. Oh, yes, of course. So I went with this lady on a vacation.
How long did it take for your mother with the court till they finalized that she could?
I don't remember then. But I know she got the $500 American. That's how I was able to go.
And did she ever come back to the house to look at you or to?
Who?
Your mother, your real mother.
My mother took me.
But before, did she come back to?
No. She was busy trying to find an organization that would give her $500 American. But that happened fast.
The Polish courts actually ruled in her favor.
Yes. Wasn't that unusual?
And let me ask, when your mother came to take you on the so-called vacation,
Yes.
how did you feel leaving the family?
I was going for 2 weeks. I was going on an adventure. I'm coming back in 2 weeks. No problem. I'm going on an adventure. And given what, potato peels weren't particularly appetizing. I didn't know it was rats, I found out later, but it wasn't particularly. Okay. We get to the train station. I have a picture of me. I think you would be interested in that. We got to the train, and there was a photographer there taking pictures. This is me on the train with a photographer, and I had an apple in my hand, which the photographer gave me, which convinced me I'll take the picture. And there I am standing on the train station with an apple, with a smile on my face, as you notice. I had an apple, why not? Anyway, I always smiled. Over here they call me Smiley too. So, and this is 1947.
It's going to show this
In
is a health
Stuttgart.
card. In Stuttgart,
I'm 6 years old. You see that coat? That was the coat I was wearing when I came to the clinics.
Wow.
You can imagine how small I was. I donated all my mother's papers to the U.S. Holocaust Washington Museum, Washington, D.C. And these are all the papers that my mother had in her possession. So they make a record of everything that you give them, and they send you a copy. I have two albums like that. One for my mother and one for that's my mom too, yeah. Mom and Chaim, the man that she married in America. These are all papers that my mother had, and I donated all to the museum for the Holocaust archives.
It's amazing. So these are the original...
these are the copies of all that my mother had. They have the Holocaust Museum has the originals.
And here you have a letter from 1946.
Yes. There are letters here. 1946. This, okay. Good. You pointed to a good one. When
If you could show the letter.
Yes. It's written in German. I told you my mother had fluency in 7 languages. German was one of them. This is the letter. She wrote to a Mr. Richter, an attorney, asking, it was his job to find from America relatives of people that survived in the Shoah. And so when in 1947 we were denied by the American quota system because of my health, and she saw all of 47, 48, still no quota system, so she decided she was going to try one more time to find somebody, and if she couldn't, then we were going to emigrate to Palestine. We were going to come to Israel. In 1948, when we were in Stuttgart, we heard on the radio about this a short guy with white bushy hair, white bushy eyebrows, saying to the world, "We Jews have our own country now called Israel." And I said to my mother in Stuttgart, "This is where I'm going to go and raise my children." So I made a promise to God. And I felt in Israel is where I will come and have Jewish children and raise them.
And that was Ben Gurion.
That was Ben Gurion. This is what I said to my mother in 1948.
And let me just ask, this is a picture of you and your mom?
In 1947. Now we're in Stuttgart now. We're in Stuttgart, Germany.
I just want to ask.
Sure.
Now 2 weeks are up. You're not really going on a vacation.
I appreciate so much you getting me back to where I should be. After the 2 weeks, I say to this lady, "Thank you for the vacation. Time to go home." My mother picks me up, puts me in a chair, and tells me, "You're never going back there because I'm your mother." And that's how I find out I'm never going back to Damshizna.
And did your mother, was she loving towards you? Did she hug you?
My mother did not know how to do that. Don't forget, she was a very damaged lady. I was not allowed to hug my mother until I was 60 years old. She knew already she was dying. She permitted me to hug her then.
And not before?
No.
And how did you feel when she said, "I'm your mother, I'm your..."
Very shortly after, I don't know if it was weeks or months, but my mother had to take me to a sanatorium, and they said, the doctors in the sanatorium said to my mother, "Frau Bressler, Mrs. Bressler, I'm sorry to have to tell you, but your daughter has at the most 6 months to live." I had spots on my lungs, which is why the American quota system rejected me, because I had spots. It's a precursor to tuberculosis. And so I had 6 months to live. Another miracle. Mother continued to stay in the hotel, Hotel Stern. Now it was a hotel. Hotel had real butter, real milk.
Is this after the war?
Yes.
And were you staying with her?
Yes.
So you went back?
My mother, we went to Ansbach first. She went back to the hotel. continued working there. But now the American soldiers came, liberated it, and they were there while we were there, and they had real food that I did not eat during the war, the real food, the butter and the milk and the eggs and all that stuff.
So how did it feel for the first time eating food that you didn't even know?
This was in Stuttgart. We moved already to Stuttgart. And my mother would, because of my health, I would purposely sit by the window, open window. And when my mother wasn't looking, all the food I didn't like, I would throw out the window. She didn't know that. I was a good girl. I ate all my food out the window.
And Chaya, did you ever wish that you could go back to the family in Poland?
After I went with my mother, after the 2 weeks, mother continued writing to them. And then after a while, we send them packages, care packages. In the care packages, in the box of rice, when we came to America, my mother would put a $10 bill in.
She was grateful. She was grateful.
In 2017, I found out what happened with that. When we met this lady that gave me all the answers, she said, by the way, I never finished the questioning. Let me finish that in 2017. So I asked her about the cherry trees. That's when I asked her about why the beatings, because there were 4 Jews there. I asked her about the cherry trees, but they were called my cherry trees, Vanja's cherry trees. The baby, when it was through that, and then the firing squad, all those questions I asked. I was going to make a point now, and it left me. Part of the joy of aging, in the middle of talking, you can forget what you were saying, but maybe it'll come back.
You wanted all the answers.
I wanted all the answers, and this lady gave me all the answers. She gave me all the answers that I was looking for.
So the package, how do you know that the package is never...
So then she also told me, thank you brought me back, by the way, you saved Carolina Klimek. How did I do that? She said, the money that you, because after I got married, I married very young, I was 19 when I got married, and I send packages of not only food but clothing, and I offered to bring them to America. They said no. What are we going to come at this age, come to a land we don't know the language? No, better we should die here. So they didn't come. But the money that I send, she developed a serious illness, had to be hospitalized, and that money paid the bill.
Wow.
Without that money, she wouldn't have been able to go to the hospital. So Iwa, this lady, said, you saved her life.
It must have been very heartwarming for you to hear that story.
Very, very.
And it's also that your mother allowed you to keep the connection, and that your mother sent packages as well.
Yes, and then when I got married, as I said, I continued. Then I already was married with 3 children in the home, in my home, because they were small then. And I got a letter, because we used to write to each other. Beautiful letters that she wrote me. I don't have a single one. I didn't think that I should save. The last letter that Carolina wrote me, you could tell she was crying because there were splotches on the page. And she said, Vanju, don't write to me anymore. Why? You remember the 2 boys that did the worst of the beating? And their mother turned you into the Gestapo? Well, those boys have been very angry all these years that the firing squad didn't finish the job. And they promised themselves that when they grow up, they will find you and finish the job. So Carolina, rather than jeopardize me, she said, don't write to me anymore. And that killed both of them, that I shouldn't write to them anymore. He died in 1972. And so I stopped writing. because I was worried, and she said, they're going to find one of your letters, and then they'll know how to find you. Don't write to me anymore. So I stopped. As soon as my second child, they both went to an out-of-town yeshiva. They weren't in town anymore. So I resumed my writing. The letters came back, not deliverable. They never got them. I couldn't understand why. When the American Red Cross sent me the results of they found Karolina and Stanislav Klimek. They found that he died in 1972 in the house where we lived. As soon as he died, she left and moved to live with her sister in a neighboring town, which I never knew she had. Because she didn't keep in touch with the sister when I lived with them, not to jeopardize me.
Amazing. You know, they should have been made Chasidei Umot Ha'olam.
And I went to Yad Vashem, and I said, the clinics, I applied. I was rejected. Why?
Because they received money from your parents.
Exactly.
Which is Meshuggah.
Excuse me, she was willing to stand against the wall. What money could that possibly cover? She was willing to face death. She was willing that I should stop writing so not to jeopardize me. How could they say such a thing to me? And this is from Yad Vashem? I have been so angry at them, you have no idea.
But you know, above, Hashem knows, and we all know. And they might not have the piece of paper, but they are Chasidei Umot Ha'olam.
So what did I do? When I went back in 2017, I met Emil. And Emil has a wall and in theater of the righteous Poles that helped Jews. And I paid, and now they're on that wall. In Poland, in NN Theater, they're among the righteous Poles that helped save Jews. Not in Yad Vashem, they should be in Yad Vashem.
There's a museum that I went to when we were in Poland for the righteous Polish Gentiles.
What's the name of the museum?
I do remember, but...
There are 2 museums now in Poland that the government is trying to shut down. The Polin Museum, they tell it like it is, and the government has been trying to shut it down.
I was there. It's in Warsaw. It's an incredible museum.
Isn't it? And the government is trying desperately to shut it down.
The one museum has got a lot on the Ulmer family. It's a mother with 7 children that she saved Jews, and she was informed, and the whole family were killed because they had saved. So they have the original workshop that the husband did, and it's a beautiful... It's basically dedicated to the Ulmer family, but also to righteous Polish Gentiles.
And there's a mother and son. I don't know if this is in Warsaw or Lublin. I don't remember which. Could be Warsaw. They made a museum out of their home, and they salvage Sefer Torahs, mantles, pictures, all that. There's another museum that talks about the Holocaust, and again, the government is trying to shut it down.
Wow, it's a pity, sure.
And we stayed, when we went in 2017, we stayed at a bed and breakfast, very fancy home. She bought it for the purpose of a bed and breakfast. It makes very good money. A single woman, this is one of her businesses. And we talked for a long time, a Polish woman, a younger woman. She's in her 40s. And she said, we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know what happened here. So should I believe her? She said they didn't know.
So can I just ask, with your mother, now you're with your mother and she says you're not going back, it must have been very difficult now you're in Germany.
I became deathly ill.
Did you start speaking German? Did you have friends?
The 2 weeks that I was with my mother worked all day, so I didn't see her all day. At night, when she finished her job, that's when I saw her. So I roamed the streets in Ansbach. I roamed the streets What was I going to
And
do?
you weren't put into a school or...
No,
And you didn't know the language,
I knew Polish.
but not German.
I didn't know only Polish. As I'm roaming these streets, I'm passing a house and I hear very strange singing. I never heard of anything like that. I was curious, so I went in the building and I come to a room and it's filled with men, old men. They all are wearing this strange cloth around them, and they have this strange thing on their head. This was in the morning. Funny thing that they've got on their head and on their arms, this funny thing, and all of them the same kind of cloth, and they're talking. I don't understand what they're talking. And an old man sees me. He goes like this. He picks me up and he asks me in Polish, "Who are you?" "I'm Vanja Klim."
You go into this room and you see...
And I hear the strange sound, strange singing, and all these men wearing the same kind of cloth on their bodies and on their forehead and on their hands, this strap wrapped around. And this old man points, I should come closer. He picks me up. He asks me who I am. I tell him I'm Vanja Klimek, and I'm on a vacation. And what this was, they were Jews davening Shacharis. They were wearing talesim and tefillin.
And
I never saw this in my life. And I went back there for the entire 2 weeks. They were so kind to me. They were so nice to me. And I went back there for an entire 2 weeks. And that's how I started learning Yiddish, because they were all talking in Yiddish. So I knew Polish. Those two men, after the 2 weeks, I continued going back there when I was in Ansbach. They taught me a good amount of Yiddish. When we got to Stuttgart, my mother signed me up into a school, a German school, and I went in the lager, in the camp in Stuttgart, to Hebrew school. I didn't go long enough. I learned the Aleph Beis, but I didn't get the language. So by the time we came to America in 1949, I'm going all over the place. Anyway, by the time I came to America, and then I want to go back to this, I knew Polish, Yiddish, German, and when I came to America, within 3-4 months, I learned English.
Wow.
So I had 4 languages.
So I want you to read this. This is an amazing, from the Hotel Stern in Ansbach, Germany, dated 24th of June 46. If you could read this, it's incredible.
This is the name of the officer that wrote this, the American officer, James Tillinghast, a major, executive officer. This was in Ansbach, June 24th, 1946. Subject, letter of recommendation to whom it may concern. This is to certify that Mrs. Anna Koenig Bressler, named Anna Chopta Bressler, date of birth August 2nd, 1906, at Nadvona, has worked as a seamstress and laundress for the officers' mess of Mill Government Detachment E203 from 21st of April 1945, this is when they took over the hotel, until June 15th, 1946. She has performed her duties in a most satisfactory manner, and we recommend her to any person desiring such services as she can give. She leaves our services upon her own request. Now, I just realized something, that we were there only until 1946, but we came to Ansbach in 1947. I don't understand. Did we go to, not Ansbach, Stuttgart. So we went to Stuttgart in June 1946. I just realized that.
Yeah. So let's show. These are amazing documents, and then here is a picture of more of the extended family.
This is my uncle's Uncle Max, who came to America in 1933. His wedding picture in Poland with all his family.
And that was in Poland.
Yes. Now, so this wedding picture, this is my uncle's family, mother and father and mother. This is Aunt Anna's mother and father. All these are family. The only one that I know that survived was because Aunt Anna and Uncle Max, they came, she went back to America, took my uncle in 1933. Giza, this is Giza, and my mother, where is my mother here? My mother, that's the only people that I know that survived.
So all the rest, these are the only remnants that we know of
from my father, not one person was found. From my mother, only the people that I told you. Max, because he came, wherever that goes. He came in 1933, and mother came in 1949. That's my handwriting. I wrote to them in Poland. Well, that's not even important, but that's the picture.
And this is what date was this? And this is your own handwriting?
Yes. What date was this? 1946, right here.
And you were 6 years old?
I was, by 46, I was 7.
7, you were 7.
Because I came with my mother to when I was
and then
6.
Here we have the original. Well, this is a copy of the original.
This is 1947. The health card that had to be filled out, and this is my mother's picture. Clara Bressler, Anna Bressler, and this is 1947. This is in Stuttgart. So, okay, 19. You know, I have to think, if my mother left the hotel in 1946, then we must have gone to Stuttgart in 1946. That's why she left Hotel Stern, because we are here.
So we can go through these pictures. This is from the reverse.
Go here. This is 1941 and a half. See this coat I'm wearing? That's the coat that I'm wearing in the train station. This is before the war. Excuse me, after the war, but I'm still with my mother. My mother had workers. And so that's me, about two and a half, something like 2-ish. And that's when she wrote a letter to my father and saying, Yossel, what do I do?
That's 1941.
And a half, right. See on top,
Yeah,
it says 1941 and a half.
Wow. That's amazing.
And on top there are my mother. The picture on the right is my mother from Germany. The picture on the left is in Poland way before the war, before she even married my father. I think it's in the early 1930s. Very early 1930s. Shall we see what other pictures there are here?
It's incredible.
This is in Ansbach, in back of the hotel. And Giza, because after the war my mother found Aunt Giza.
That's her sister?
Yes. That's me. And that's Bronya, a friend that worked at the hotel as well, a Christian lady.
And here, this is...
This is me. And I would imagine in Ansbach.
And... Wow. This is 1946.
Yeah.
Ansbach. Yeah.
This picture is this
The
picture.
reverse, yeah.
No, this is 1941 and a half. So what's this picture? Da panientka. I don't know.
And do you still remember Polish?
No. Ja nie rozumiem po polsku, ja nie mówię po polsku. Meaning I don't understand Polish and I don't speak Polish.
I'll put it back. Wow.
While you're looking at the pictures, I'll tell you about this. But I have to make a stop.
This is from Ansbach in 1946. These are all the It's from 1942, Joseph Bressler. Who unfortunately was murdered in Medanich.
The picture that you saw with the people, was that before, yeah. That's again way before the war, Uncle Max. So that means this has to be about 1930.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, her mother, and Giza, Uncle Max.
And in this picture?
And this is in one of the two houses. This is where the daughters lived. I do not know who this couple is with.
This was in Poland?
Yes, in Natwona.
That's 1932 in Saltwina.
Soldvina, yeah. This is September 18th, 1932. That's when Uncle Max married Antenna. Uncle Max, my mother. I'm assuming that's a relative. I do not know. Probably a sister, because she looks a little bit like Uncle Max. But I have no idea who. That's me at the train station. And as you can see, the same coat as I wore before. But I wanted to show you Ah, 1945. Around the corner from here is Hotel Stern. My mother, around the corner from that block, there was a apartment building, and my mother rented a room from a lady. She was the cat lady. Little lady, rosy cheeks, sweetheart, and had lots and lots and lots of cats. And we rented a room from the cat lady. So that's Bronya that you saw in the other picture, my Aunt Giza. I do not know who she is. A friend of the family, my mother, and that's me. So this must be wintertime already. And so that means my mother took me either spring or summertime. It would be summertime.
And in the picture above?
That's in their home, my grandparents' home. My grandmother, that's Frida. Giza, Mom, Uncle Max. So in Stuttgart, my mother wasn't getting anywhere finding, so she decided she was going to try one more time to write to a lawyer to see if he could find any relatives in America. And he's the one that found Uncle Max. He called, my mother said, all I remember is my brother's name is Max Koenig and he was from Bronx, New York. That's all I remember. So that's you saw my parents' wedding picture. Wedding picture again. This is Uncle Max's wedding pictures, which you saw. And so here, you saw all these pictures. Yeah.
I'll put it back. Sure. So, Chaya, that is really, really unbelievable. And Chaya, if I can just ask you, when you were now just with you and your mother in the hotel in Stern, and also when you went to Stuttgart, did your mother speak to you about your father, who he was, or her extended family, and your Baba and Zayda?
No, my mother, all the years that I lived with her, all she talked about was the war years. The war, but not about family. The bitterness of the war and being in Hotel Stern, and that the workers, she was worried that the workers would give her up to the soldiers, and that lived in the hotel. She talked about seeing Hitler and she couldn't kill him. She felt so. All my mother, all the years that I lived with her, was the bitterness of the war, the anger, when my children were small, my 3 sons, I used to say to them, throughout your life, you're going to meet a lot of different people. A lot of people. Every single person that you'll meet, you can learn from them. From the good ones, you learn what to do, and from the bad ones, you learn what not to do. And my mother was an excellent teacher of what not to do. And that is the bitterness, the anger, the no belief in a higher power. I was not going to do that. So I saw the damage that it did. And I did not want that. I didn't want to raise children like that. I needed to give back strong Jews. And you don't become a strong Jew by being constantly angry and bitter, and no.
And your mother, did she ever speak about her emunah, her faith in Hashem, or?
As far as she was concerned, there was no God. As a matter of fact, she would not light candles, Shabbos candles, until after I was married, and sometimes my kids and I would go see her all the time, but sometimes my kids joined me. And then she was embarrassed that she didn't light Shabbos candles because her grandchildren saw that so then she started, because of my kids, lighting Shabbos candles. But as far as she was concerned, there was no God. How could he permit such a thing?
So you are basically the opposite. Your whole.
That was my goal.
Your goal was really the opposite of your mom's, in a way.
Because I didn't want that bitterness. This is what I should have children for, that they should be bitter and angry? No, that's not what a mensch does. No.
And being a little child, you couldn't understand the whole psychology of your mother, or why she reacted to you that way?
When I was a child, I tried to commit suicide 4 times. My mother would go, you have got the Geschlitzer. You should have died. My husband should be living. You should have died.
To put that on a child is so...
So I've got beatings. I've got firing squads. I lost the clinics. Kids in America, they beat me. This little Gloria gang. I should be dead. What's there to live for?
But you forgave your mom.
When I was an adult, I didn't know how to forgive her. I'll tell you what happened. My mother had the terminal illness, And I was there every 3-4 weeks. And during the week, I lived in Rochester, New York. I called her every day, and we would talk. One night when I was there, I took care of them, everything. You name it, I did. The doctors and money issues, everything. I would give my mother the medicine, I would give her the supper, I would bathe her, put her to bed, and I had to lay down with her to calm her down so she could fall asleep. When she fell asleep, I would get up and sit on her couch and think about the 15 years that I lived with her and those hard, hard years. But when I found out that she was terminal, and by then I had years of experience working with hospice. I've been a hospice person for 30 years. I've taken care of hundreds and hundreds of people, and several that died in my arms. And so I worked with her. I got my mother a hospice nurse, and I worked with her how to help my mom. And although she outsmarted me, she got a neighbor to get her herring, and herring was a killer for her because she had a very bad heart, which I inherited, but the heart is much healthier now. And that's how she died. But
how old was your mom when she passed away?
92.
92.
But she married a man that was an angel, also went through the war, Polish and Russian. And when I met him, he didn't talk about the war. But then after he was married to my mother for quite a few years, then he also started talking about his war experiences.
And how old was your mom when she remarried?
She remarried in 1960, October 1960. And they were married. Mom died in 2000, and he died in 2003. They met in Israel. And they got married. She brought him to America. And so she married him.
Did he have a family of his own?
He had a wife, and she was pregnant when he was taken away into the army. You notice on the mantle, I had written in memory of two fathers, Chaim Yeshietsky and Yossel Bressler. Because why did I put his name on here too? He didn't have one single solitary family member alive. He was so good to my mother the 40 years that they were married. He deserved recognition. So I had his name put on the mantle as well.
Beautiful. Sure.
And by the way, Yossel Bressler, when Perestroika happened and I gave the search committee, Yossel Bressler, they wrote me back every single year, we can't find him. And then my son found in Majdanek, he found out that he was in the 2 labor camps, and then he was captured, then he was put in Majdanek. All that my son found out.
He found out.
Yes. And the reason they couldn't find him, now listen to this, the reason that they couldn't find my father was in Majdanek, the record said Avraham Yosef Bressler. It wasn't Yossel Bressler, it was Avraham Yosef Bressler. That's why they couldn't find him. They didn't have the full name. Now, listen to this. In those years, you were only allowed 3, I'm a cesarean section.
I think this is the form that you're...
Bressler Yosef Nadvona in Lublin umgekommen, meaning he died in Lublin.
Which Majdanek is a suburb of Lublin. It's
that's
right
where,
on the...
That's it. In 1942, so it wasn't 43.
And this is where your son found these documents, and here's also from...
Yes. Yes. Yossel Bressler. It says 19 and the parents, Hirsch and Yetta, and mother was Anna, born maiden name Koenig, 1910 Pashechna. It wasn't 1910, it was 1908, we found out later.
Amazing.
Anyway, What did I start telling you? Because it's a very important point that I want to make. What did I start telling you before? Before we did this, before you showed me this, what was I saying?
That your son found the documents
Yes.
of your father.
Yes, that his name actually was Avraham Yosef Bressler. Because I was a C-section, I was only allowed to have 3 children. My 3rd son, I said to my husband at the time, I have to name both names because we had a minhag, we had a custom. The first child, I gave the first name. I named Yosef after my father, and my husband gave the second name. The 3rd child, he gave the first name, and I gave the second name. The 3rd son, knowing this was going to be my last child, I said to my husband, I have to give both names. David Avraham. I didn't know my father. I didn't know his name was Yosef Avraham. I insisted on the name of Avraham.
Wow, that's amazing.
Can you explain that to me? So, my youngest had his grandfather's name.
And you didn't know this?
No. And yet I insisted I had to name.
Okay, I just want to thank you. I'm going to just come through over here. Sure. So, Chaya, this has been absolutely breathless hearing what you have to say. There are no words, really. What you've gone through and what you've experienced, and you're positive, and you're. Normally I ask what message, but your whole talk is a message. Your whole outlook is such a positive message.
When we started this interview, you asked me, I told you, the moment we're born, God gives us a gift, and it's called choices. I've used those choices. Should I have become like my mom, the poor lady? I should have been angry and bitter and no belief in God.
Your emunah is unbelievable.
Yes.
And it's remained. And you've instilled that into your children and
Absolutely.
your grandchildren.
Absolutely. I made a promise to God, and I've kept my promise. You're not supposed to count grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I have 21 grandchildren and
Wow.
31, and now I found out 2 days ago it's going to be 32, God willing, in October, great-grandchildren.
Wow, so Chaya, you should just have all the mazel and bracha.
I have.
And you're so incredibly positive, and you are just you are amazing and incredible.
Tell me something. I go outside of this door and I smile. How much is it costing me?
That's so true.
And yet, you know how many people in this building have told me, when I see you, no matter what I go through, I feel better. Because you've got a smile. Every time I see you, you've got a smile.
And your life hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy at all.
Every time I leave the door, because I'm smiling, doesn't mean that I'm going, but do I have to punish somebody else? No.
Your whole attitude, your whole outlook is so amazing. We can all learn so much from you, really.
Upstairs is my best friend. How could I not be?
So
I've got an amazing friend.
I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, really.
Thank you.
And may Hashem just bestow all the blessings on you and your dear family, and you should just know nachas and just mazel and bracha and good health, and you should continue. Because you are an inspiration. You are really an inspiration.
But may I tell you something, and I say this from my heart. You are the inspiration. Because you are so passionate about hearing people's experiences. You care to listen. You have no idea how many times I've been told by people, come on, it happened 50 years ago, 70 years ago. Get on with it. You don't forget this.
Of course not.
This is with you until you go home.
For sure, this is part of your life.
Yeah, but you didn't go through this. Where do you get this passion? That you care to listen with such respect and such caring.
That's very kind of you.
No, I thank you as a survivor. I thank you for caring.
I'm so taken aback by this, but really, the bottom line is that we thank you and we are indebted to you, and your story is just something unbelievable. Really.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's been such a really the greatest honor and privilege, Chaya.
People,
Really has.
just don't make differences between each other. Let's be open and caring towards each other. That's the message.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.